Buonasera a tutti, benvenuti a questo incontro col Premio Nobel per la Pace 2011 ed ex Presidente della Liberia Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, che ringrazio di essere qui con noi per aver dedicato la sua Lectio Magistralis ad una personalità che è nel nostro cuore e nella nostra memoria, come Giorgio La Pira. Per una pura coincidenza, nelle nostre sale a piano terreno ospitiamo in questi giorni la mostra di alcuni testamenti di grandi italiani organizzata dal Consiglio Nazionale del Notariato e l'immagine del professore è la copertina del catalogo ufficiale. Ringrazio anche il Presidente dell'Istituto Universitario Europeo, Renaud Deus, con cui collaboriamo con grande sintonia, e grazie anche al vice direttore dell'ANSA Stefano Polli, che so essere amico caro e prezioso dell'Università Europea. Questo appuntamento riveste per noi una particolare importanza. È infatti il proseguimento di un ciclo di incontri che la Fondazione ha avviato ormai da alcuni anni e che hanno come focus l'Europa. Siamo consapevoli di quanto sia importante parlarne, soprattutto in un momento politico così complesso. Potrei affermare che lo riteniamo un dovere civile. Crediamo infatti che una funzione civica di informazione e di confronto non deve mancare da parte di una istituzione che non è solo al servizio del territorio con le sue erogazioni, ma vuole anche stimolare una lettura critica della realtà in cui viviamo ogni giorno. Ma l'incontro di oggi segna anche una nuova tappa della lunga e fruttuosa collaborazione con l'Istituto Universitario Europeo, che la nostra Fondazione sostiene da sempre e che ha avuto un ulteriore impulso la scorsa estate con la firma di un nuovo accordo che prevede la promozione congiunta di ricerche, analisi, programmi di formazione, eventi pubblici sulle principali sfide riguardanti l'Europa e il processo di integrazione dell'Unione Europea. Desideriamo approfondire questo partenariato con l'EUI anche al fine di valorizzare il ruolo di Firenze nella prospettiva dell'avvio delle attività della Scuola di Governance Transnazionale nella futura sede di Palazzo Buontalenti. Come sanno bene coloro che seguono la nostra attività, alla Fondazione sta molto a cuore la formazione delle nuove generazioni ai vari livelli. Ricordo che solo pochi giorni fa abbiamo salutato con grande emozione 160 studenti tra i 17 e i 19 anni provenienti da tutta la regione che cominciano il programma Tutto Merito Mio, finanziato assieme ad Intesa San Paolo, che li accompagnerà nei loro studi fino al conseguimento della laurea. Per questo abbiamo sostenuto con grande determinazione la nascita nell'ambito dell'Istituto Universitario Europeo nel febbraio 2016 della Florence School of Banking and Finance, che ha lo scopo di formare i futuri dirigenti del settore finanziario e bancario in Europa. È un progetto sostenuto unicamente da noi e dall'Istituto Europeo e ne sono destinatari funzionari della Commissione Europea, dell'Autorità Bancaria Europea, della Banca Centrale Europea e delle banche nazionali, così come gli studiosi della materia e tutto il settore bancario e finanziario privato. Dunque, una iniziativa davvero di grande rilevanza che eleva ancora una volta il ruolo di Firenze in un contesto internazionale. Quel ruolo che Giorgio La Pira, e qui vengo al tema di oggi, gli aveva fatto assumere quando, nell'ottobre 1955, con un gesto entrato nella storia, convocò in pienissima guerra fredda tutti i sindaci delle capitali del mondo con lo scopo di unire le città per la pace tra le nazioni. La Pira, infatti, come ben sanno molti dei presenti in sala, l'anno precedente partecipò a una riunione della Croce Rossa Internazionale di Ginevra, dove vennero affrontati i problemi connessi alle conseguenze della terra. Rimase sconvolto dalla testimonianza dei sindaci di Hiroshima e Nagasaki. Così tornò a Firenze e convocò tutti i sindaci delle capitali del mondo, ai quali propose un patto fra loro per l'unione e la pace. 3 anni dopo, nel 1958, decise di intraprendere una nuova iniziativa, forse ancora più visionaria: i colloqui mediterranei centrati sul ruolo geopolitico dello spazio mediterraneo come punto nevralgico per la pace mondiale, dialoghi che ben presto si allargheranno all'intero continente africano e al Medio Oriente. Leggo in questi gesti 2 elementi profetici e geniali, estremamente attuali rispetto alle finalità che intende perseguire questa lecture, che oggi inauguriamo intitolandola al suo nome. Sottolineare il ruolo delle città quali cuore del destino del mondo, l'anima stessa della società umana, il luogo, come lo sono i paesi, i comuni, i quartieri, le formazioni sociali e urbane, nei quali si gioca il futuro dell'uomo. La Pira era convinto che lo spazio per la persona si crea dal basso ed eccolo avviare un nuovo canale diplomatico, non degli stati, ma delle città. Questa prima intuizione è davvero profetica, perché allora, siamo nel 1955, si pensava che l'unica realtà pubblica forte dovesse essere lo Stato. Ma il professore non era di questa idea e lasciò la politica nazionale per tornare a fare il sindaco della sua città. Il secondo fattore profetico e geniale è la concezione del dialogo come forma della politica. Sappiamo bene che Firenze, in particolare, ha iscritto nel suo DNA questa vocazione ad ospitare il dialogo tra ciò che è diverso e trasformarlo in ricchezza. Ecco dunque il dialogo tra Ovest e Est, si pensi al Concilio di Firenze del 1439, e soprattutto il dialogo tra la sponda nord e la sponda sud del Mediterraneo, tra Europa e Africa. Un dialogo reso possibile da una radice che ci accomuna tutti, il valore assoluto e trascendente della persona, umana e della sua dignità. Tutti ricordano lo scalpore che destò la partecipazione di Giorgio La Pira ai funerali dell'anziano re del Marocco Maometto V, ma per lui l'uomo e la donna sono in relazione con l'infinito, qualsiasi nome si dia a questo infinito, e per questo la persona viene prima di qualsiasi istituzione pubblica e privata. Ecco, tra pochi giorni, il 5 novembre, ricorre il 42esimo anniversario della scomparsa del professore e sono davvero grato all'Istituto Universitario Europeo e al premio Nobel Sirleaf per aver dedicato questa lezione al sindaco santo. È un segno forte per ricordare quanto il suo carattere profetico e geniale rappresenti ancora oggi un esempio e una ispirazione per chi dovrà immaginare le politiche pubbliche del nostro presente e del nostro futuro. Ed è un segno di grande speranza per tutti noi che ogni giorno desideriamo operare per il bene comune in base alle nostre responsabilità e ai nostri ruoli. Grazie.
Bene, il Presidente Salvadori ha già detto tutto, dunque mi atterrò solo a 2 brevissimi commenti. Uno per dire che in un certo senso la nostra School of Transnational Governance, a ben guardarvi, non è altro che la realizzazione con una 60ina di anni di ritardo di un sogno di Giorgio La Pira. Dico questo perché all'epoca in cui si discuteva della creazione di un'università europea, come si diceva allora, La Pira fu uno dei pochi a sostenere l'idea che questa università non doveva essere rinchiusa su se stessa, sui paesi europei, che all'epoca erano anche ben pochi, ma doveva essere una struttura aperta al mondo intero e in particolare, per i motivi che sono stati detti, ai paesi in via di sviluppo. Bene, noi con un po' di ritardo stiamo cercando di dar vita a quell'idea, semplicemente. Lo facciamo grazie, lo tengo a sottolineare, ad un fortissimo appoggio sia del Comune di Firenze e sia del governo italiano, poiché è stato durante la presidenza italiana dell'istituto che fu approvata l'idea della creazione della scuola. Con questo patrimonio era quasi naturale, inevitabile, anzi, pensare ad una forma di commemorazione che ci avrebbe legato alla persona così ricca, profetica, ha detto il Presidente, come Giorgio La Pira. Non possiamo pensare a un modo migliore per commemorare, continuare questa sua battaglia per l'uguaglianza all'interno della comunità mondiale, che fu fra i primi ad identificare come comunità. Vediamo dunque l'evento di stasera come solo un punto di inizio, prima fra una serie di interventi di alto livello volti a non solo commemorare un pensiero profetico, ma anche a prolungarlo, ad attualizzarlo, perché le sfide nel frattempo sono cambiate e il mondo si è un po' modificato. Shifting to English, I would say that we couldn't have dreamt of a better name for this first lecture than that of President Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, both for her remarkable record as Africa's first democratically elected female head of state, who had to lead her country through reconciliation and recovery in an extremely challenging period, but also for her role in an equally important endeavor, namely for the recognition of women's rights, recognized by the Nobel Committee in 2011. With all these achievements, she has all the qualities, I think, to precisely help us in the aggiornamento, always necessary, of the initial opening made by Giorgio La Pira. And we, therefore, very much look forward to her talk tonight. Thank you, President, for being with us, and I really would like to give the floor briefly to Mr. Poli from ANSA to just introduce the discussion, after which we look forward to your talk.
Grazie Presidente. Grazie al Presidente Luigi Salvatori. Thank you to President Deus. It's a great pleasure for me to be here. I'm a journalist. I'm the Deputy Editor-in-Chief of ANSA, the Italian news agency, but I have been for many years special correspondent for ANSA, and I've been several times in Africa. That's why it's a great privilege for me to be here with Ellen Johnson Sirleaf, the first woman to be president of an African country, Nobel Prize for Peace 8 years ago. I want to say that I really appreciate the idea to create Giorgio La Pira lecture, and I want to thank European University Institute, ANSA, as a very strong cooperation with European University Institute and also with the School of Transnational Governance. And I want also to thank la Fondazione Cassa di Risparmio di Firenze. Let me say just a few words about relations between Europe and Africa. I think today we have a great opportunity to discuss about the relations between the old Europe and the young Africa. President Sirleaf, I want to tell you the truth. Here in Italy and in Europe, we don't talk enough about Africa. We talk about Africa often when we have to talk about the issue of migrants and refugees. Millions of people who try to get to Europe from countries where there is no democracy in respect of human rights, where there are wars, conflicts, where there is the climate change, where it's impossible to find clean water, a job, food. But Africa is much more than that. And I think today, listening to your remarkable lecture, I'm sure we could have the opportunity after the lecture, we have the opportunity to have Q&A with you. We have the opportunity to try to discuss, to think together which kind of relations we could build between Europe and Africa. Concrete relations, real relations. I think I have better stop speaking because I'm the moderator and not a speaker. Let me repeat that it's a great pleasure for me to meet you, and it's a great honor for me to give you the floor, President Sirleaf.
Mr. Renaud de Hoos, President of the European University Institute, Mr. Fabrizio Tassanari, Executive Director, School of Transitional Government. Thank you, Mr. Salvadori, President of the Foundation, and thank you, Mr. Poli, for all your kind remarks. President de Hoos, all of you have said sets the stage for what I will be saying in the next few minutes. More than a few minutes, right? In the next half hour. Let me also say thanks to Mr. Grassi, who kindly met us at the airport, and to recognize our dear friend, Mr. Ruben Lewis, who is a graduate from here, now having returned to his country, Sierra Leone, and has been very instrumental in putting the pressure on me to make sure I came here. It's an honor to be here in this beautiful and historic city of Florence. This is the birthplace of some of the greatest artists, poets, and philosophers in human history. Michelangelo, Da Vinci, Dante. Political philosophy itself also has significant roots in Florence. Niccolò Machiavelli, author of the seminal work, The Prince, was born here. And more recently, Florence was home to the man for whom this lecture is named, Giorgio La Pira. As most of you know, Giorgio La Pira was mayor of Florence, not once, but twice, from 1950 to 56, again from 1960 to 64. Following World War II, according to the records we've been looking at, La Pira was tasked with rebuilding the city and in turn played a significant role in drafting Italy's post-war constitution. During the Cold War, La Pira made journeys across the world, even to Russia, China, Vietnam, reaching across barriers to advocate for peace and human rights. I am humbled to be among you today to deliver this inaugural lecture in the name of this distinguished person from Florence, and to prevent whatever I say in the name of this visionary man. In the few decades since Giorgio La Pira was mayor of Florence, the world has become increasingly interconnected and complex. The Cold War ended over 10 years ago after La Pira's death in 1977. But now, new challenges to peace, human rights, and international cooperation have emerged. For example, according to the United Nations, there are over 258 million international migrants. Many migrants leave their homes seeking better lives for themselves and their families, but face a myriad of challenges such as exploitation, persecution, and economic hardships. In Africa, where migrants form over 80% of those who leave our continent, are able to provide benefits to the countries in which they settle. They carry skills, knowledge, resources, and they contribute to the development of those countries. Advancements in technology and communication have also made the world more connected. This represents new opportunities to global trade and the modern economy. At the same time, increased competition has led to power struggle among nations who strive to stay at top of this rapidly changing world. This leads to potential conflict and the creation of barriers, social, political, and otherwise, that will require new and innovative solutions to overcome. Kofi Annan, our revered leader, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, put it best when he said, "Tolerance, intercultural dialogue, and respect for diversity are more essential than ever in a world where peoples are becoming more and more closely interconnected. To solve such problems, new kinds of leaders are needed, ones who can navigate the international world of today. They will need to overcome cultural barriers and political challenges unseen in past generations. They will need to be at the forefront of new technologies upon which the world will become more dependent. More importantly, they will need to be and see the bigger picture and rise to these complex challenges. Today, I will speak about some of the challenges my administration faced and how transnational solutions aided in their resolution. I will talk about global challenges and provide my recommendations for how transnational solutions can be reached. I was first inaugurated in 2006, following decades of ruinous civil war that cost the lives of many of our citizens. Our economy was in shambles and our infrastructure in need of repair. My administration inherited a crushing debt burden of some $4.9 billion, and 100,000 ex-combatants swelled the ranks of the vulnerable employment to more than 80%. We had to prioritize, determine the most impactful and immediate interventions. With only $80 million in annual revenues and a debt service that represented more than 6 times our GDP, Liberia was at the bottom of a very deep hole. This burden prevented us from spending critical social and development plans and channeling resources to the most vulnerable. However, we understood then that the newly consolidated peace would be strongly linked to our agenda of inclusive growth and development. And so we went to work, re-establishing Liberia within the community of nations, restoring relationships with the World Bank, the African Development Bank, the International Monetary Fund, to receive the necessary technical and financial support for achieving macroeconomic stability. We went to major donors in the United States, in Europe, to secure foreign aid for our development agenda. We also implemented wide-ranging reforms at home to support the private sector, resuscitate industry, and return the country to a path of economic recovery. I'm pleased to say to you that international cooperation worked. Our economy responded with an average growth of 7.5% between 2006 and 2013, making Liberia one of sub-Saharan Africa's fastest growing economies. In 2018, the Maud Abraham Foundation named Liberia the only country out of 54 to improve in every category and subcategory of the Maud Abraham Index of African Governance, moving us up 10 places in the index overall ranking for the period since 2006. This earned me the Maud Abraham Prize. Moreover, under my administration, Liberia was put on a path towards greater social development as well, building upon work done before the war. And to end conflict, women's rights were improved and protected. Free speech expanded, and the country was set on a path towards a more inclusive and peaceful society. These efforts were recognized by my being granted the Nobel Peace Prize. Unfortunately, our progress was slowed by Ebola. But this was another instance in which multilateral cooperation proved not only successful, but absolutely vital. An unprecedented global mobilization of resources to the sub-region was organized under the United Nations Emergency Ebola Response Mission, with the United States, the United Kingdom, and Germany among the largest donors, along with a host of African nations who deployed their doctors and healthcare workers to the emergency zones. Although over 4,000 of our remembered citizens were lost, the outbreak was contained, and Liberia was declared Ebola-free in January 2016. All of this was due not only to international cooperation, but to Liberians and the resilience they demonstrated, to local healthcare workers who had accomplished the most work and put themselves at the greatest risk. But we also know that cooperation from the international community was so vital. Otherwise, this disease would have taken many, many more lives. Friends, Liberia was able to overcome these challenges by reaching out to the international community and working across social and political barriers. Other challenges in the world need similar strategies of cooperation and multinational teamwork. Let me talk about some of the most pressing issues that will require new, innovative effort to be solved. I mentioned it before, but I'll come back to this because it is so important to the people in Europe, the challenge of migration. The reasons why people leave their homes are varied, but many do so to escape violence, extreme poverty, and to improve the lives of these families. Because these migrants cross international borders, international cooperation must be involved. Cooperation is also needed to help resolve the crisis which are causing people to leave their homes. Concerted effort by the international community can work with governments as partners to reduce poverty rates, prevent war, and improve governance. If these areas are improved, many will be less likely to leave their home nations. Of course, many multinational institutions do just that. The World Bank, the United Nations, other international multilaterals, all do this. However, much more need to be done to improve these efforts. Solving migration and the problems that force people to leave their homelands require greater cooperation and teamwork, not isolation and withdrawing from key international alliances and institutions. Our governments, African governments, and other governments from which people flee also have a responsibility. In fact, the most primary responsibility to ensure that they create those conditions, they adopt those policies, they work with those institutions that will address poverty, that will address access, that will address inequities and the lack of justice in those nations. When they set the groundwork, when they do the fundamental steps, then international cooperation in partnership can ensure that those who leave their homes will not have to do so. Or if they do, they will do so in a responsible and regulated manner to ensure that wherever they go, they form part of a society respecting the laws, ensuring that they live in communities as one, contributing and making sure that they are regarded as those who bring value and those that do not come to undermine the integrity and the friendship and the peace of the communities to which they exit. Let me also mention that the global community must do even more to address the dire impact of climate change. We must be proactive, not reactive, in the face of this environmental challenge. It is clear that less developed countries in the global south will bear the brunt of this challenge. Despite having significantly lower CO2 emissions from the United States, China, and Europe, Sub-Saharan Africa has already and will continue to suffer high economic damage due to climate change. And with the growing climate crisis, food insecurity in developing countries will only be aggravated. Currently, more than 820 million people do not have enough to eat, and this is more prevalent in sub-Saharan Africa. This has already begun to affect those that are the most vulnerable in our society: the farming women, the market women, the rural women, those who are in the informal sector, who have not had the opportunities of an education, who do not understand why it is today that the seas are rising, that their farming systems are changing, that they don't have access to the factors of production, the capital, the technology that's required, because no longer can they grow the plants, the foods that they're accustomed to. This needs to be addressed because it's a global challenge and it calls for a global solution. The global South will not simply remain a buffer to allow Europe and the West to be untouched by climate change. This is why multilateral initiatives such as the private climate accords are a vital first steps, and I'm inspired by the passion of young people, including Greta Thunberg, in advocating for governments to respond to this issue. Activists like Ms. Thunberg also illustrate the need for female leadership and the need for the world to come together to uplift young women and girls. Just think, the millions one teenage girl was able to mobilize all across the nations to go into the streets, to call for action, to call for recognition of this global challenge. She joined the many women of this world who continue to be left behind, who are the most vulnerable in the face of climate change and food security. This is why we say they must be at the table when we solve those challenges, because they are the most vulnerable, because they are the most effective. It is common sense for the world to recognize this. It is common sense for you, each and every one of you in this room, the men who have wives and daughters, to understand the role you have to play in recognizing that women can be the solution to many of these problems. According to the United Nations, women leaders are more likely to bring peace and spend more time on social programs for the benefits of citizens. I believe that the new kind of leaders the world needs will be women. With a growing need, I try to look across the room to see all of those who would be in disagreement quietly as they put their heads down or nodded in disagreement. but I'm glad that the clap allowed me to accept that you agree with what I said. With a growing need to focus on developing nations, I am pleased to learn about EUI's initiatives to connect Europe and Africa and train a rising generation of multinational leaders. This initiative will provide African students the opportunity to take part in a master's program where they can learn skills related to leadership and international cooperation. It's my hope that this program will produce new leaders who are able to exert themselves to expertly navigate complex global problems and find solutions that benefit not just one nation or people, but so many across the world. Dear friends, ladies and gentlemen, overcoming these challenges may seem daunting. Indeed, they may seem impossible. However, we must recognize that the world has already employed international cooperation for the benefit of all. Following World War II, the United States sought to rebuild Europe through the Marshall Plan. Aid and assistance were sent to Europe to rebuild devastated infrastructure, jumpstart economies, and help European nations get on their feet. The United States recognized that assistance to a war-torn Europe was not only a humanitarian duty, but that developing the economies of Europe would have a reciprocal effect. A developed Europe would in turn benefit the economy of the United States and the rest of the world. The Marshall Plan was primarily one of assistance and aid. However, this reciprocal effect of cooperation does not have to wait until war, disaster, or economic collapse. Africa and Europe can deepen cooperation and mutual benefits through sustainable investment in the private sector. Investment brings a wealth of benefits to companies looking to make profit and the areas where they are investing. As European firms invest in Africa, they help to create jobs, invest in local communities, and train employees in vital skills. But the benefits are not one way. As Africans gain important vocational skills, become more educated, benefit from social investment, and earn more money, Europe will benefit from a better business climate and a developed Africa much in the same way the United States benefited from a developed Europe. Today, Africa is indeed moving toward the place where it can claim the right, not only for the ownership of its own destiny, but the right to be a full partner in a partnership of mutual benefits. Over 400 African companies are now crossing over $1 billion or more a year. This number is set to grow. Just as European investment in Africa benefits local communities, industries, and the nation, so too can African firms benefit Europe. We live today in an interconnected world. There is no escaping the movement of people across borders. There is no escaping the movement of knowledge across borders. There is no escaping the fact that we have to live together as people. We have to be able to understand the value of diversity in culture, in religion, in history. And as we do so, the recognition that Africa and Europe have historic relationship, ones that go way back to the movement of Africans before their nations evolved fully, and to the means whereby Europe was able to provide from Africa those natural resources. Both Europe and the rest of the West in their own rebuilding. Today, a strong Africa is now ready to also take its place in the international community, being able through trade, through development, through partnership, help with a Europe that is aging, help with a Europe that is going to need the skills that their own citizens will not be able to provide because they will not have the numbers. Africa today is the fastest growing economy, fastest growing continent with the youngest population, now being able to prepare them to join the ranks that will make for this strong partnership. While times have changed, the underlying principle that a rising tide lifts all boats has not changed. This is my hope for the future of Europe and Africa. Both regions of the world have much to offer each other. Neither will solve their respective problems in isolation. Rather, it is strength through cooperation. It is strength through partnerships. It is strength through interconnectivity that each will be able to reinvigorate their economies, develop their nations, and reach boldly into the future. Our icon, the revered Nelson Mandela, said, "The task may seem impossible. It always seems impossible until it is done." We believe that this impossible task, this impossible dream of an Africa-Europe connection is one that can be realized. We believe the time has come to bring back those days of history when we traveled across borders, Europe to Africa, today Africa to Europe, to now bring back that spirit of mutual cooperation. It can be done if you make it happen. Thank you.
I wait. Thank you very much, President Sirleaf, for your remarkable lecture about this new world, more interconnected and maybe more complex than a couple of decades ago. I think your speech could help us to have a mutual knowledge, to know each other better. And I really agree with you when you say that we have transnational solutions and we need we need transnational solutions for global problems. I want to underline two words you used, tolerance and dialogue, as Mr. Kofi Annan said. I also want to underline the word you use when you talk about the relations between Africa and Europe. You use the word dream, and Martin Luther King used this word. You talk about the big challenges that we have to face in the next years, in the next decades, climate change and migrants. I was really impressed when you said that currently more than 820 million of people in Africa do not have enough to eat. I was really impressed. Migrants, you talk about values, principle, solidarity. I want to say, if you go to Buenos Aires in Argentina, you can find millions of people with Italian names and Italian surnames. If you go to São Paulo in Brazil, you can find millions of people with Italian names. If you go to Philadelphia, New York, Chicago, you can find millions of people with Italian names. There is a small area in Sydney, in Australia, where they speak the dialect of Trieste, a town in the northeast of Italy, because 1 century ago, thousands of people from Trieste decided to go to Australia to try to build a new life. It's very important that we keep our memory, because we were migrants and we were very poor. A new Marshall Plan for Africa. This could be the good idea for the cooperation between Europe and Africa. And I really want to thank you for your remarkable speech. And I agree with you when you said that women can be the solution of many problems. Now, thank you for your kind attention to the lecture. And we have time for a Q&A. Who want to? I'd like to have a woman for the first question, and also a woman for the second, and also a woman for the third question. Then
may I
others.
before we start, just make one correction. The 820 million people are not all from Africa.
Pardon?
It's a worldwide 820 million people that are starving, don't have food.
Yeah.
It's worldwide, but the majority of them are in Africa. Just to make that correction.
Thanks.
Good evening, all. Good evening, Excellency. My name is Anik. I'm from Cameroon. I'm currently a fellow with the School of Transnational Governance. It's very an honor to be here today. I have, touching to what you raised regarding the climate change crisis, the peace building across the continent, the way to engage more strategically with Europe. When I also look back at the continent, I mean Africa, I think there's also a crisis of leadership. So in your own view, how do you think we can reverse that? So that we can actually, take advantage of all those opportunities and make sure we are prepared to actually take the seat that we deserve, I will say, in the global affair. And then I actually really like the idea of the Marshall Plan for Africa, but how do you think we can actually prepare ourselves if eventually there's a Marshall Plan for Africa, how Africans themselves can be ready to kind of seize that opportunity? And then my third question, second or third, I don't know, is about just to have a personal view on your experience, how when you were the only African president, female, I mean among your peers, do you think you were ever treated differently among your peers because of your gender? I would just love to hear about that. I thank you.
Okay, crisis of leadership, we need new leaders, absolutely. But it has to come when we decide to make those leaders, to prepare those women to become leaders. Today, Africans are seeking knowledge, information, education at all levels, preparing themselves. Where the problem is, the leadership is not moving up, particularly for women. So you find that many of the women are found at the bottom, as we were discussing. We were discussing about the pyramid and the fact that women form all the workers. If you're dealing with the health system, education systems, the women are there. But as you go up, they are not there. On the political side, although democracy has taken root, although we have many cases in which countries have, in adopting democratic systems, have led to the regular and peaceful transfer of power from one elected government to another, we still have too many countries that have lagged behind. Citizens of that country have to take a position. Citizens of that country have to claim their right to be a part, their right for participation, their right to ensure accountability from their leaders. Again, it's happening, maybe not sufficiently, in too many pockets of places where those actions are not taking place. We need to continue to work across borders. Existing leaders, informed leaders, progressive leaders need to become the strong advocates, the interventionists, to be able to bring about those changes in those places where the leadership has lagged behind. And believe me, the young people are no longer waiting for change. They are demanding it, they are claiming it, and so that change in leadership is coming. The sooner you get home and be a part of it, the better it will be. Marshall Plan for Africa. How do we prepare? Africa has been preparing through vision. We have the Africa 2063, which in many ways have certain similar goals as the Sustainable Development Goals, and is trying to get countries to domesticate that vision in its own national strategy and national goals and national plans for execution, consistent, of course, with their own specificities, with, based upon their own environment, their own endowment, their own capacities. They'll have to make those plans in giving due recognition to those particular factors. But with that, we are ready for that. But when the Marshall Plan, if we think about it in the historical context, says that yes, we take primary responsibility. Yes, we must adopt the visions and formulate the policies and have the strategies, but that with all of that is not enough. Africa faces an infrastructure deficit. That is its main major constraint. The roads, the railroads, the ports, the bridges, all of those things that make mobility of people and goods and services, that enable Africa to industrialize, to get the manufacturing plants, to get those that produce the jobs. If we don't do that, then we haven't arrived. So if there's any Marshall Plan, it must be for infrastructure. And as I mentioned, the private sector, given the fact today that multilateralism faces a challenge, official development assistance face a challenge today. We don't know, given what's happening with this complex world, where populism, isolationism, division is leading. Because of that, one has to say that more and more we have left our private sector underdeveloped, and we must put emphasis on that. And this partnership with Europe needs to concentrate on that, because it will improve trade. In improving trade, Europe will benefit, because that trading relationship will enable us to even grow economies on both sides and resolve some of the problems. My experience as the only African woman, there are many African women leaders, bear in mind now, there are plenty. Maybe none have reached the pinnacle yet. I was able to do so, and I had to take risk, and I had to suffer, and I had to go to jail, and I had to do all those things that, you know, that strengthen the character of a person to prepare for leadership. And so, but you know, once you've gone through the struggle, and once you've demonstrated your ability to stand firm in what you believe in, once you have confidence in yourself, then you can rise above it, and you can compete effectively. And so we're talking about women leaders, not only at the top. Well, although Africa has to, you women have to work very hard, because it's a gap now. There's no one there anymore. So we see the photo now, we don't see women there. So we'll have to work to be able to cover that gap. But my own experience was, first of all, I think we're not talking about tokenism. We're not talking about women claiming leadership because they're women. No. We're talking about capable, experienced, knowledgeable women who can compete on the same terms with men and win. And that's what we're aiming at. And not only women, but excel. Because I do believe that with women respecting the sensitivity of being a woman, which makes women more attention to peace, more attention to the needs of humankind. This is why a woman makes a better leader, because they do put emphasis on that thing while being able to be equal in every other way. I need a clap for that.
Thank you for the clap. Thank you, President Sirleaf. Populism is another of the global problems that we have to face in these years. Here in Europe, there are these new kind of parties that are on the rise in these years. Please.
Hello. The Marshall Plan. All right, I want to not modify, but add something to that. An academic Marshall Plan. You see, I dare say many of the people in this room know what a Fulbright program is, I think. Yeah. Okay. I've had several of them in Europe. I'm sure many of the people here who are leaders of their countries have had the Fulbright plan. And you know, this was started by the American government, by the State Department, visionary Senator Fulbright from Arkansas, the mentor of Bill Clinton, and very important figure in the 1950s. And tens of thousands of people have gone both ways. Americans, of course, Americans going abroad and other people coming to America. Graduate students and also faculty. How about the Marshall Plan of Europe and Africa involving academic exchange at that level, initiated by the Europeans, not by the Americans, because we've done it already, but for Europeans to start a European-African academic exchange program on a concerted basis in bringing people from African countries to here and from Europe to Africa, both graduate students and faculty. I can tell you in my own life, I'm retired now, but it made my whole career having had Fulbrights, and I know so many other people who have done it both directions. So this could be something that would add to the Fulbright from an academic angle. I wonder about your feelings on that.
No, I think it's a great idea. We have, many European nations gave scholarships today to Africans, but it's not in the context of a Marshall Plan. And that's what you're saying is let's make it bigger. Let's grow it with a specific purpose to make sure that we grow those students that have the intellect to be able to make the plans in our country, to be able to maintain those systems that our private sector would develop. So I do not see the two as mutually exclusive. As a matter of fact, I see them as complementary, in which a Marshall Plan for infrastructure, being able to work in tandem with another Marshall Plan or part of that Marshall Plan for promoting academic excellence and academic capacity, I think would be a win-win. So, as we go around and talk about these, let me put that into my notes.
Thank you. To tell you the truth, a couple of years ago, the European Commission proposed a so-called Marshall Plan for Africa, but after that declaration, there were not concrete actions. There. Okay. You go ahead.
Good afternoon. I'm George Theodore Dugnon, student from Rondine Cittadella La Pace, where we are experiencing the creative transformation of conflict. And I also did a master in global governance. My question is on that, because I'm studying the conflict, and I met people from 16 countries with different contexts of conflict. But in every context, I see a problem. And I think that the real problem is about dialogue. But in my case, I have another problem, which is education. And in some countries in conflict, we have this problem, in Africa mainly, where education is where the government and the militias are against education and against schools. And my question is that how can education can contribute to the development of those countries? Mainly the case of Mali, where we have 900 schools closed by armed groups. Thank you.
First of all, I don't think any government in Africa would be a party to closing the schools, because education is a high priority for every African country. They may not have the resources to build the structures, to respond in the quality that's required, but that priority is there. The conflict in certain parts of Africa, and you're talking about right there, it's resource-based, is externally supported, it's political. And so of course, you're absolutely right, as long as the conflict continues, education will be affected, because there will be no access to schools. The kids can't go to school because there's war, because there's shooting and all. It's a problem. But it's that geopolitical rivalry and thing that sometimes create these problems, and the poor people in the area become the victims. The victims over what is somebody else's war. And I think there are a lot of efforts being made by the United Nations and by others to try to resolve it. I know that's a big global advocacy about silencing the guns. You know, silencing the guns. Well, I was about to say that I just, saw a big Africa meeting and guns were the main item being discussed. I mean, that's, unless we get rid of the guns ourselves, our governments have to do something about the guns themselves, and do something about, the partnership with people that bring in the guns. So we all need to work on that. And the young people need to make that a subject of their dialogue and their discourse, and their appeal and their peaceful protests. I said peaceful. To make sure that we find a way to silence these guns.
Okay. There is a very long line for the questions. Yeah.
Thank you very much, President. I'm Catherine Jougou, and I'm also a researcher at the European University Institute. You mentioned, obviously, a lot international cooperation, and I was wondering if you could give your views on international law. So what are your views on the making of international criminal law with the ICC, the making of international law to fight corruption in general, the making of international law to provide corporate social responsibility? So what are your views on international law?
Well, we do have international law, we do have standards, we do have protocols, we do have, agreements that set the standards for international law. The problem is not everybody else accepts it and respects it. Some of the big ones that make the laws, that lead to laws, that lead to it, don't respect it themselves. So that creates a problem. But I think every nation have their own laws. Most times, constitution, laws, strategies, policies will say that they subscribe to certain international standards of governance, which also includes respect for the law, which also includes systems, legal systems that give dignity and respect and the protection of people. It's all there in every country. The respect for it is quite another matter. And being able to get people to implement those laws is what much of the kind of fight and struggle for good governance in every country takes place, even in the developed countries. You still have problems with, these treaties, these understanding, these laws and standards are there, but people can violate them with impunity. And one has to just keep, and the International Criminal Court is, as you know, has some big problems. Big partners have not signed on to the court. And so many smaller nations are using that as an example too, to say, well, if the big partners that also have been part of wars and conflicts and the promotion and the support for conflicts cannot respect it, then it creates a weakening of those who would like to continue to advocate for total respect and total implementation of those standards and laws. So it's just a continuing, one has to continue to work for it. Some countries are better than others in this regard. Some leaders are better in the respect for this than others. So it's a question of how do you keep those that fall beside, those that violate, how do you keep true citizens through civil society, how true international organizations, how do you keep putting the pressure on for the respect for them?
Next question.
Is it my turn?
Yeah.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Good evening. My name is Valerie Farjan, and I'm responsible for international relations for the School of Political Science, University of Florence. And my question would be the following. You said that infrastructure is crucial for Africa. actually, but the point is that most of the infrastructure has been built by China. So my question is about hard politics. And it's not just China, and China is not just building, highways through Ethiopia or whatever else. The list is very long, but it is also paying lots of scholarships for African students to go over to China. And I don't exactly know what kind of education will be provided in China in terms of their ideas, their ideology. On the other hand, China is also very interesting for Russia currently, and it's not just only Russia. So there are lots of countries across the world that are interested in African countries, in Africa in general. And unfortunately, I have the impression that the situation is not so wonderful for the European Union. I had an interview a few years ago with Deputy Minister for Energy in Tanzania, and when I asked him what was the perception in his country of what the EU was doing, after some courtesy, he ended up by saying insignificant. And Tanzania is now building a huge, or has finished building a huge pipeline with Chinese money. So my issue is, how do you think we can actually improve the relationship between Europe and Africa? Because at present, what is basically in the mind of Europeans is stopping migration. It looks as if they have no long-term strategy. No, but it's actually even me, because I'm European. So my worry is, how is it that things could improve, because at present I do not see things as working that well. And just one final thing, the EU fully endorsed the Millennium Development Goals, and as you know very well, Millennium Development Goals are basically about education and health, but if you go and look at the country strategy papers and how the money was actually spent, the EU spent practically no money on health, very little money on health, very little money on education. So my basic question is, how can we improve the relationship?
The elephant is in the room. China is the elephant hero in every international meeting. We get asked this question as African leaders everywhere you go. You ask the question, why come you let China build your infrastructure, benefit from your natural resources? Why do you let them? The simple answer is, they are there because you are not.
Exactly.
And that's what we're trying to change. When you say, what can we do? We're trying to change that now. Don't forget that Europe was there in those early days of exploitation of natural resources. You were there then. Let's remember that. You brought out that the iron ore and the forest and the gold and the thing, you know. Now we want to reverse that and say, come back. But come back now and let's rebuild this so we can be true partners now. But let me say to you that we are increasingly aware of what may be perceived to be the dangers of China, you know. They bring a lot of people there, they sort of penetrate the society with people, they take out natural resources. Some of that is true, no doubt. But I think our countries now are fully aware and fully able to be able to handle that, to negotiate in such a way that national benefits, you know, are not compromised. And that is going on. But the fact that the movement toward reactivating, rejuvenating Africa-Europe relationship is precisely because of that. Precisely because one wants to see the nations with which we have a much more cultural affinity, much more systems affinity, much more shared values. And so the Council of Europe, you know, we have a group called the Friends of Europe. I'm part of that group. We just met about 3 weeks ago in Brussels and met with the Council to talk about, again, how does one try to rebuild this at a time when you know, the most favored nations for many of our countries has been the United States. Well, the United States is on its own path right now. We hope it won't last, but right now we don't know. And so I think we all just have to make more effort to be able to build this. Yeah, and when you say it's true that there are times we fall short of the goals, the percentage of national resources that should be dedicated to education and health, as sometimes it falls short of what have been established as, you know, something. But it's not fair to say no money is spent on education and health. No, that's not so. Many countries have prioritized health. Many countries have prioritized education. Sometimes not sufficient resources in keeping with a priority they established themselves, but not enough to ensure that the goals of those priorities are met. That's true. But I think you know, there's effort to continue to improve that, to go back to being able to give more to social infrastructure, which are education and health systems. And for many countries that have met it, the advocacy in our African Union, in our regional economic institutions, is to do exactly that, recognizing that unless we have an educated population, nothing else would work. I don't care what you do, you can build all the best infrastructure if you don't have people with the capacity to maintain it and to see that it operates efficiently, then it doesn't work. So we have to do more.
Thank you. You know, President Sirleaf, here in Europe there are many concerns about relations with China. Some European leaders are very worried about the new economic and commercial agreements that we have signed with China. So we have this big elephant in the European rooms. Okay, next question.
Spero di fare una domanda lapiriana del professor La Pira. E le direi grazie non per il Nobel Prize, non per il... Sì, parlo italiano. Ah, scusi. Spero di farle una domanda lapiriana, si dice da noi, legata al professor La Pira, perché io gli dico grazie non per il premio Nobel per la pace, ma le dico grazie per i 12 anni di essere stata a capo della Liberia dopo questa guerra civile tremenda che indirettamente ho conosciuto attraverso certe persone. E io le chiedo solo questo, molto diverso. Le è servito, quando era in Liberia e quando ha preso il suo paese, a avere un'utopia, condividerla, cercare di realizzarla con gli altri? O un'utopia è funzionale a migliorare la realtà? Questo proprio al capo di governo lo chiedo. È funzionale avere una utopia? Grazie.
No. I don't believe in utopia. I wish I could dream it, but I'm too much of a realist. You don't agree?
I do.
Should I? Should I? Would that solve Africa's problem?
To avoid the
No, I tell you, we do have visions. We do have dreams. We hope we could create the world when people had respect for each other, when people regarded the rights of others, when people protected others, when people were friends to each other. We all wish we could create that kind of world. And we continue to speak it, we continue to say it, we continue to dream it, but it's tough. In the real world, it's tough. Because there's so many distractions.
Next question.
Sì. Scusate.
You are the next. Go ahead, please.
La Sua Eccellenza, presento le mie ammirazioni per ciò che rappresenta per il continente. Però c'è un po' di perplessità. Le mie perplessità riguardano un po' il fatto che il continente stesso non riesce a porre una sua identità. Oggi vediamo che siamo tanti stati africani che si ritrovano in Russia. Domani forse in India. Erano in America, in Europa. Tutte le volte che ci chiamano, corriamo e andiamo. Anche perché per cultura il dialogo è una cosa basilare per il continente africano. Però quando si va a dialogare, uno deve cercare comunque di presentarsi come appartenente a una cultura. Questo manca molto. Credo che sia anche quel problema che non riusciamo a risolvere. Ecco perché i problemi africani continuano a perdurare. Allora io volevo chiedere una cosa. È possibile cioè ritornare a ciò che l'UNESCO ha pensato di mettere sul tavolo, parlando dei principi di diversità culturale? Così quando l'altro viene da me, mi considera come anche una persona con la sua cultura e poi si dialoga. Questo va nell'economia, va nei rapporti sociali e così via. Per il poco che io conosco del continente africano, ma molto dopo tanti studi, perché ho conosciuto cioè, il continente qui, non in Africa. Il continente africano, cioè quando si va a scuola, si insegna, cioè, ci insegnano le culture europee. Addirittura i nostri antenati erano gallesi. Allora, così non si può crescere, assolutamente. Questa è una prima preoccupazione. L'altra preoccupazione riguarda un po' il ruolo della diaspora. Un po' tanti anni fa l'Unione Africana ha deciso di considerare la diaspora come la sesta regione africana e poi il progetto è rimasto lì. Oggi si parla dello stato della diaspora africana e la diaspora dolorosa, cioè la diaspora che proviene dalla schiavitù, situazioni difficili nel passato. E poi c'è anche la diaspora moderna. Cosa che si fa realmente? Questa è la mia domanda. Grazie.
Each African has to go back and find its cultural roots. Nobody's going to do it for you. Nobody's going to give you a book that says something else. Don't forget, Africa has its own origins, its own beginnings. It had its own empires and its own governing systems. It was its evolution as a nation was interrupted by the slave trade. That's history. We make no complaints about it now. It's been a long time ago. So we don't claim anything because of that. But you have to know it. And you have to live it, and you have to recognize it. So you have to go back and claim it by being a part of it. That doesn't mean that the modern way of life will be dispensed. No, we've accepted the modern way of life. That's part of our value system today. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't know that you had that you have your identity, that it was commuted, but that you have part of it that still is there today. Go in many places. The culture is there in so many places. And more countries are trying with government support to bring back that culture, to do what you say, to make sure that we recognize it. Your clothing, your language, your speaking, are all things that have, an African value and flavor. You just need for us to use it a bit more. Because it's been many years that we were, like you say, we were learning something else, paying attention to something else, being schooled in something else. But many of the young people are going back. If you notice, in many of our countries, they're taking out it, they've put a necktie down now. I'm talking like African now, sorry. So let's all try to find it together. That's the only way. Go back and read a little bit more of our history, appreciate our history, appreciate our culture, appreciate our values, but now at the same time embrace the things that make us a stronger nation, that make us more developed. We gotta embrace that too. Because without that, then we found ourselves seeped in culture and not advancing, because it's now a technological world, and you cannot stop that part of it because it's overcoming us, I'm sure you do Facebook. You're talking about diaspora. You do Facebook. You do Instagram. You do all of those things that bring you into the new technological world, and that's a good thing. So you got to find a way to balance the two in such a way that that it makes you part of the entire sort of the new human race, the new way of thinking, where we're all grouping sometimes trying to find the right way to make sure that we preserve ourselves, we preserve it, and at the same time that we advance to remain competitive in the world as individuals or as nations. We continue to strive for that competitiveness also by advancing as much as other people. So the diaspora is an important part of Africa's development. What they say, what they do, how they prepare themselves to come back, how they support their own causes at home. It's an important how they represent the continent in what they do and what they say. It's very important because the continent will be characterized by what you do out here and how you prepare yourself and how you conduct yourself. Is how whether they will respect your nation and respect your continent, is how you represent it. So we look at all of you as ambassadors ambassadors for the continent, so you need to carry the flag and be able to promote it.
Please go ahead. I'm afraid this is the last question because our time is over.
Madam President, thank you. I'm sure we're all inspired by these tremendous range of remarks, from the most philosophical to the most practical. My name is Michael Stopford. I'm a former UN and World Bank staffer doing some work on this African program, African Leadership Program for EUI that you mentioned. Madam President, if I could ask you on a very practical note to finish up with. 9 years ago, I heard you with my friend Mark Clack, who did work with you in Washington, saying that the biggest impediment or the biggest thing that you need is investment again, private sector investment. And I remember those 9 years ago, it was to an American audience that you were speaking, and you were hoping for some really tremendously sort of significant US investment. In the 9 years that have passed, thanks to leaders like you, Madam President, there's been a tremendous boost in African entrepreneurship, in African private sector. But here you are today, 9 years later, calling again for private sector investment from Europe this time. And I think the last question I would ask you is, what do you think are the greatest impediments to that private sector investment? What do you think are the greatest impediments today to the continuation of African entrepreneurship, which we all welcome? So I think that would be really useful for all of us here, if I might ask you. Thank you very much.
No, you are correct. First of all, some improvement has been made. Infrastructure is being developed. But we still, in many countries, don't have that conducive environment to encourage private sector involvement. Some of it has to do with corruption. Some of it has to do with capacity. Some of it has to do with the rights of people, judicial systems to protect rights and contracts. We still have a lot of problem in that regard. You're right. And so I can say to you from my own experience that mobilizing sometimes private investment is the easy part. We mobilize for so many billion, but getting that money to convert from a document of commitment to something on the ground then takes all these other things, you know, work ethics, integrity, capacity, respect for laws, and all of those things. So I grant you that that's why 9 years later I'm still calling for investment. But let me also say that 9 years later, much has changed. That's why today you have a Kenya, or you have a Ghana, or you have a Senegal, and others that are booming because they've been able to create that environment to enable private sector capital to have the comfort, you know, to be able to invest with surety and to get the returns on investment. And so those examples, we all have to keep playing it up so the others can see that and adapt, you know, to those kinds of conditions that will enable them to also grow.
Well, there is the very, very last question, very quick and very short, please.
Grazie. Sono Eraldo Stefani, sono il console onorario della Repubblica del Senegal da 23 anni. Mi dispiace, sono un pochino rauco. Signor Presidente, il suo intervento è stato bellissimo. Io, rappresentando il Senegal, avevo conoscenza dei rapporti tra Giorgio La Pira e Léopold Sédar Senghor. In Firenze si incontrarono nel Salone 500 nel 1962 e dissero le stesse parole che lei ha riportato. Avviciniamo le città per avvicinare le nazioni, facciamo incontrare i bambini che saranno i politici di domani. Giorgio La Pira peraltro è stato il mio professore di istituzione di diritto romano, io sono un avvocato, ho studiato a Firenze, quindi sono un suo allievo che ho beneficiato di un suo 30. Era molto facile perdere il 30, ma lui diceva: attento, perché se questo 30 non lo hai meritato, vedrai che te lo ritroverai poi nella vita. Allora volevo dirle, nella mia esperienza nell'osservatorio di console in 23 anni a Firenze, ho potuto constatare l'arrivo di tanti cittadini senegalesi nella città di Firenze e nella regione toscana. E mi sono ho cercato di aiutare, di fare quello che fa un console onorario per fare in modo di rendere più semplice e più sicura la permanenza temporanea nel Paese. Condivido quello che ha detto, è bene che questi africani poi rientrino in Africa e portino un contributo loro stessi, divengano protagonisti di percorsi. Mi domando, ma come si fa a parlare di Giorgio La Pira, di lei Presidente, di Leopoldo Sédar Senghor, che erano uomini che avevano valori fondamentali impressionanti, che avevano un'etica unica? Come si fa a vedere, io ho visto nella mia esperienza di console onorario, ho visto tanti anni, ho visto cose dell'altro mondo, i peggiori italiani vanno in Africa, incontrano i peggiori africani e danno origine alle peggiori iniziative, siano esse imprese ed altro. E allora dico, se la strada è quella della donna, perché ha più etica dell'uomo, percorriamo quella. Perché l'etica fa parte dei valori fondamentali di ciascuno di noi. Io sono un avvocato e ho a cuore la legalità, la cultura della legalità, il senso dello Stato, e mi dispiacerebbe far avere la ragione a uno che ha torto, anche se questo magari per un altro avvocato può essere un obiettivo. Dico questo perché esco da questo incontro molto arricchito e non la dimenticherò facilmente, perché sono un operativo in ogni momento quale console. Cosa si può fare per fare in modo, io lo penso io, ma lo dica lei se lo condivide, preparare i giovani già all'inizio delle scuole, facendogli capire cos'è l'amore e cos'è il disamore, facendogli capire qual è l'accoglienza e cos'è non accogliere, facendogli capire che l'amichetto di scuola è l'amico con il quale poi condividerà un percorso. Cioè, lei ritiene che si possa partire anche dalla scuola e incrementare e arricchire la scuola, e con la scuola anche la famiglia, che è una scuola primaria, la famiglia delle persone, e fare in modo che si cominci a gradire questa persona che arriva nel territorio, perché è vero, è pacifico che quando si vedono arrivare tante persone ci sono certe persone che sono accoglienti, certe altre no, capito? Non è facile poi trovare anche un rapporto di reciproco rispetto tra le persone, parlare con una persona africana. Si può trovare la persona africana con la quale si ha un bel dialogo, una persona africana con la quale non si riesce ad averlo questo dialogo. Allora domando a lei, Presidente, pensa che si potrebbe operare dalle scuole elementari in su per formare una nuova generazione che dialoghi meglio? Pensa che andare in Senegal per aiutare a creare le infrastrutture, come lei ha detto, a imprenditori italiani si faccia bene? E quali garanzie abbiamo che questi imprenditori non saranno truffati? Quale garanzia abbiamo che questi imprenditori non ritornino in Italia? Io ne ho qualche esperienza per averlo visto. Non ritornino in Italia dopo aver dato denaro, e questo mi preoccupa quando sento che la Cina, e concludo, la Cina ha detto è l'elefante. Ma questa Cina come ci va? Ci dicesse qual è la ricetta per andare in Africa e operare. Qual è la ricetta? È la ricetta dell'eticità che non abbiamo. Cosa fanno loro per riuscire a prendere gli appalti, a fare tutte queste cose?
Grazie.
Allora nel mio piccolo dico a lei, cercherò di seguire il testamento di La Pira e chiedo a lei se la strada è la donna, perché la donna è più etica, me lo dica perché non lo sapevo.
Is the higher vote you can have at university here in Italy. Because you said I have 30.
You found the answer yourself in your statement. Four words. Let the women rise.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm afraid our time is over. I want to thank Ellen Johnson Sirleaf. It was a wonderful afternoon. I want to thank the European University Institute. I want to thank the School of Transnational Governance. I want to thank Fondazione Cassa di Risparmio di Firenze. I want to thank all of you for your very kind attention. Have a good evening.
After that, I would like to answer after.
Okay.
It was really a pleasure to meet you. Thank you very much. Thanks a lot.
Can we take a group photo together? Stay over here.
One minute, let me just